So this is actually used to build and maintain the data systems to analyze the large volumes of data. Okay, so this is like something related to the big data. So there are a lot of things that you can do here. So if you just open up this data engineering experience from the Fabric homepage, right? So basically, these are the things that you can do. So one is to create or manage a lakehouse, and you can create a pipeline. You can design a pipeline, and for copying the data into the lakehouse, and you can utilize the Spark job definitions. And you can submit these over a batch or streaming jobs, and then you can also write the code, write the data back into the one lake. Data engineering, we talk about the Spark cluster and the notebooks most of the times. So this is the lakehouse. So I would say the foundation of Microsoft Fabric is a lakehouse. Uh, every database will require its own compute engines, right? So here for the lakehouse, we have two compute engines. One is the Spark, and the other one is the TSQL compute engine that runs behind these lakehouses. Because lakehouse is nothing but a combination of data lake and data warehouse. So when I say data lake, here all the structured as well as unstructured data can be present. And in data warehouse, only structured data can be present, which is mostly like RDBMS. So here our SQL engine works, and the data lake, our Spark engine works. See, in Fabric, this is the only place I would say where both structured and unstructured data can reside together. There is an option here in the data lake. When you open it, there's a section called files and tables. So files can have all the unstructured data, and tables can have all the structured data. Okay, so, and also one more thing that you need to consider here is when we store any data in this lakehouse, the underlying data will always be stored in the form of Delta Parquet format. Okay, that also the data will be stored in one lake again, which is an open data lake format. The other things are like you have different frameworks available to process the data, like Spark and notebooks and SQL queries and analytics. Everything is possible here. One more thing to consider here is when you create a lakehouse. So what happens is in the background, a lakehouse will be created, and on top of the lakehouse, there will be another component which is created, which is called an SQL endpoint. So an SQL endpoint is something which is a warehouse created against a lakehouse, I would say. Okay, but the storage and all, it's same in the one lake, but it is just a pointer that enables us to query this lakehouse through the warehouse or through the SQL language. So Apache Spark job definition, these are nothing but a set of instruction that like you define like how to execute a job on a Spark cluster. So basically it contains like input and output data sources and some transformations, and then configuration settings for the Spark application. So here we can submit the batches like streaming batch or streaming job to a Spark cluster, and all the notebooks or the jar files that will have all the transformation logic, and so it just transforms the data as per the code written, and then so the final job will be storing the data in one lake, or can be anything, like it can store the data in any other place as well. If you want to use this Apache Spark job definition, it is mandatory to have one lakehouse, because in the notebook, when you initiate the Spark runtime, right, it has to take a context of the default lakehouse. So that is the reason. So this is a fundamental tool in Fabric to interact with the lakehouse data. With notebook, as you all know already, like even with the Databricks, we use the notebooks, so it can like contain the live code, like equation, visualization, whatnot. So everything you can do using the notebook, using the languages like Python, R, Scala, PySpark, everything. What is Fabric runtime? So when we initialize any Fabric instance, under the hood, what happens is ideally we are just enabling the Fabric clusters behind the scene, right? So what the cluster is nothing but it's a compute node, or any node actually. So the node is nothing but a system, right? So that system will contain the Apache Spark, the operating system, default level packages like all these Java, Scala, Python, and then the Delta Lake. This is also a library for querying the Open Delta Lake format. Okay, so and as you see here, there are three runtimes actually mentioned here. Um, so whatever we do in the fabric, we first create a workspace in the fabric, and then we create the elements inside the fabric. Okay, and that elements can be of any experience, be it a data warehouse experience or Power BI experience or any experience for that matter. Okay, so when you create a workspace, that workspace is actually attached to a capacity, meaning it is tagged to a compute node. And also you have the capability to change the runtimes. You can go for this, or you can change to this, you can change to this. So based on your workload and the other, uh, the complexity of your jobs, you can choose different runtimes to execute at different intervals. Okay, so this is about the Fabric runtime. Data warehousing. So here they say it is a lake-centric. What I understood from the lake-centric is that the central role of the data lake in this architecture, right? This is because whatever that gets stored in this warehouse will be ultimately stored in one lake storage layer, right? And this one lake is again, whether it is a lake house or a warehouse, all the data that we store in both of this, it will be stored in the one lake storage layer. Okay. And so you can also create some shortcuts in the lakehouse, so which points to the other data sources. So you are all aware of creating the shortcuts in your Windows desktop, right? So let's say I have some file in the C drive and I create a shortcut in my desktop. So do you think the desktop shortcut is the actual file? No, right? It is just a pointer to the C drive file. So likewise, we can create the shortcuts actually in the lakehouse, and that shortcut we can create on different sources, but again there are certain limitations. So so far, like the limitation was only for Azure data lake storage. So but they are adding more capabilities, the client tools, right? So I said about this SQL Server Management Studio, we can install this and then we can query the data warehouse from our local system. We can install this and we can query the data warehouse. Okay, that is also possible. And so here it says autonomous workload management. What it means is the underlying compute is it's distributed query processing engine for the warehouse SQL compute. So meaning there are no controls to turn with autonomous allocation, right? The performance with automatic scale and concurrency, everything is built in, except few. Like you can just control the degree of the parallelism though. And then the next is the open format for seamless engine interoperability. Um, so what it means is that the data warehouse, right? The data in that warehouse, it's stored in the Delta format. Um, and also it enables the ACID transactions. Um, so here interoperability refers to the data in one lake that can be, used across the other services in the fabric as well. So the customers no need to create multiple copies of the data. So if they have one copy of the data, that can be used across different services. That's the beauty of it. So as I said earlier, the separation of the storage and compute, the decoupling of it, that is also a very important point here. These are all the very common practices like easily ingestible, loading, transform. So you have different options to do that. So there are certain commands. As I said earlier, like there are different activities, right? The copy activity, the store procedure, data flows, all are available in this. Okay. And then DDML, DDL and DML queries, whereas the Lakehouse doesn't support that. Okay, you should consider this. Because this has a SQL engine behind, so it can support these kind of transactions, the DDL and DML queries. Of course, there are a lot of limitations. They are still working on those limitations. We'll see later.
Please like, share, and comment, and don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel.